Have you ever wondered what would happen if Captain Rex had led a successful clone rebellion? Today, we are going to explore the galaxy far, far away to discover what would happen if the major events from the universe were altered. What if Captain Rex had exposed Order 66? How about if Captain Rex had fought against Commander Cody? We will explore all these questions and more as we ponder what if. What if Captain Rex discovered Order 66 before it happened? The sterile corridors of Camino echoed with the hum of machinery and the distant roll of thunder from the perpetual storms outside. Captain Rex stood alone in the medical bay, his gaze fixed on the empty examination table where his brother, ARC Trooper Fives, had lain just days before. Fives had died trying to reveal a sinister plot. His final words of lucidity, a desperate plea for Rex to uncover the truth. Haunted by the memory, Rex vowed to honor his brother's last request. "I'll find out what you were trying to tell me, Fives," he murmured, clenching his fists. "I promise." Determined to uncover the mystery surrounding Fives' death, Rex approached the Kaminoan administrators, requesting access to the medical logs and security footage related to his brother's treatment. "I'm sorry, Captain," Lama Su replied, his tone devoid of emotion. "Those records are classified, under direct orders from the Chancellor himself." Frustration gnawed at Rex. Why would information about a clone's medical condition be restricted at the highest level? The more he pressed, the more resistance he encountered. As he navigated the labyrinthine halls of Tapoka City, Rex couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. His training had honed his instincts, and he was certain somebody was tailing him. Rounding a corner, he spun on his heel, hand hovering over his blaster. "Show yourself," he barked. From the shadows emerged a young girl with blonde hair and curious eyes. She couldn't have been more than 13. "Who are you?" Rex demanded, though he slightly relaxed upon seeing the child. "I'm Omega," she replied with a soft accent. "I've been following you. I know about Fives." Rex's eyes narrowed. "How do you know about that?" Omega glanced around nervously before stepping closer. "I work as a medical assistant. I saw what happened. If you're looking for answers, I can help." Hope sparked within Rex. "Alright, where do we start?" "Follow me," Omega whispered, leading him through a series of back corridors to a secluded lab. Inside, the familiar form of the medical droid AZ-3 whirred to life. "Greetings, Captain Rex," AZ-3 chirped. "I assisted ARC Trooper Fives during his examination. How may I be of service?" "I need to know what happened to him," Rex said urgently. "Can you access your memory banks?" AZ's photoreceptors dimmed momentarily. "My memories of that period have been erased. However, with Omega's help, we managed to recover fragments." Omega produced a small data chip. "This contains what we could salvage. It talks about inhibitor chips implanted in all clones." Rex's heart pounded. "For what purpose?" "To ensure loyalty," AZ explained. "A control mechanism should the clones ever act against their programming." A cold realization settled over Rex. "I need mine removed. Now." "Are you certain?" AZ asked. "The procedure is risky." "Do it," Rex insisted. "I won't be a pawn in someone else's game." With Omega assisting, AZ performed a delicate surgery. As the chip was extracted, Rex felt a weight lift from his mind. "Thank you," he said, swinging his legs over the side of the medical table. "But this isn't over. I need to protect my brothers." Omega nodded. "What will you do?" I'll start with the 501st, Rex replied, determination hardening his features. And then, I'll need to speak with General Skywalker. Returning to the 501st Legion, Rex maintained a facade of normalcy. He couldn't risk arousing suspicion, especially if the inhibitor chips could be activated remotely. In the privacy of his quarters, he reached out to the men he trusted most. Commander Cody of the 212th Attack Battalion, Commander Wolf of the 104th, Commander Gree of the 41st Elite Corps, Commander Bly of the 327 Star Corps, and Commander Bakara of the Galactic Marines. Using secure channels, Rex relayed his findings about the inhibitor chips and their potential for control. "This is a serious claim, Rex," Cody responded, his holographic image flickering. "Do you have proof?" "I had mine removed," Rex said, showing the small scar on his temple. "I need you to trust me. We have to get these chips out before it's too late." Wolf frowned. "And if we refuse?" Rex's voice was firm. "If you refuse, you're gambling with your free will. You're soldiers, not slaves." A heavy silence settled over the comms. Then Cody exhaled. "All right, we'll do it, but this stays quiet. If word gets out, we'll be executed for treason." Each commander made arrangements to have the chips removed from their most trusted men first, then followed by the rest of their legions. The process was slow, careful, and done in secret medical facilities. By the time the last batch of clones was freed, nearly every major clone division had removed their chips, except for the Coruscant Guard, those most loyal to the Chancellor. Only then did Rex take his findings to the one person he trusted above all others. Anakin Skywalker paced his quarters aboard the Venator-class Star Destroyer Resolute, his expression a storm of confusion and rage as he examined the inhibitor chip Rex had placed in his palm. "This was in every clone," Anakin muttered, running his fingers over the device. "Yes, General," Rex confirmed. "And it's not just a simple tracking device. These chips are designed to control us, to make us kill the Jedi. Fives figured it out, but we didn't believe him. I barely did at first." Anakin's blue eyes burned. "We have to tell the Council." Rex hesitated. "With all due respect, sir, I don't think the Jedi Council will act fast enough. We need to take this to the Senate. If we can expose this publicly, the Chancellor won't be able to silence it." Anakin clenched his jaw. He knew Rex was right. The Jedi Council would debate, deliberate, and hesitate, as they always did. He could not allow that. "There's only one person who can bring this before the Senate," Anakin said finally. "Padme." Rex nodded. "Then we better get to her before the Chancellor finds out what we know." Padme Amidala stood at the entrance of the Senate chamber, a data chip clenched in her fist. The information on it would shake the Republic to its core. Beside her, Rex and two of his most trusted soldiers, Jesse and Apo, stood guard. "Once this is presented," Padme whispered, "there's no turning back." "That's the idea, ma'am," Rex muttered. The moment they stepped toward the chamber, a sudden explosion rocked the platform beneath them. Smoke filled the air, and from the shadows, blaster fire erupted. "Ambush!" Jesse roared. A squad of unidentified troopers, clad in black armor, rushed them. They moved with ruthless precision, aiming straight for Padme. Rex and his men sprang into action, forming a defensive line in front of her. Jesse fired, taking down one assassin. Apo shot another, sending the soldier tumbling over the ledge. Blaster bolts whizzed past Padme as she ducked behind a pillar. Rex tackled an enemy to the ground, pinning him beneath his knee and tearing off his helmet. Beneath it was a clone. Rex's heart pounded. These weren't just any soldiers. These were their brothers. "Set your blasters to stun," Rex shouted. "These are clones." The assassins were relentless, their programming overriding any sense of self. Jesse was forced to gun down another before he could draw a vibroblade. With a final, well-placed shot, the last attacker fell. Rex bent over, catching his breath. "They know," he growled. "The Chancellor knows we're onto him." Padme straightened, determination in her eyes. "Then we have to move. Now." She turned and strode into the Senate chamber, ready to reveal the truth. The Senate Hall was in complete uproar. "This is treason!" Masameda bellowed, slamming his staff on the ground. "These accusations are outrageous!" Padme stood tall at the podium, unwavering. "The proof is undeniable. These inhibitor chips were implanted in our soldiers without their knowledge. The clones were bred not just to fight the war, but to be used against their will." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the chamber. Senators turned to one another in shock. "This must be investigated immediately," Bail Organa said firmly. "If these claims are true, then the Republic has been manipulated from the beginning." Masameda scowled. "The Supreme Chancellor will have the final say in this matter." "The Supreme Chancellor," Padme interrupted, stepping forward, "is exactly who we should be questioning." All eyes turned to her. She locked her gaze on Masameda. "Where is Palpatine?" The Chagrian hesitated for only a moment, but it was enough. Anakin's blood ran cold. He turned to Rex. "Get your men. We're going to Kamino." The Resolute descended upon Topoka City under heavy rain. The 501st and the 212th moved in formation, securing the facility under Anakin and Obi-Wan's command. They demanded all the details about the chips. The Kaminoans offered their usual cold resistance. "I'm afraid that information is classified," Lama Su said, hands folded calmly. "Only the Chancellor himself has access." Obi-Wan frowned. "That's convenient." "We'll see about that," Anakin growled. As Obi-Wan led the others back to the ship, Anakin lingered, his anger simmering. He focused on Lama Su, reaching out with the Force. "You will tell me everything." Lama Su's expression twisted, and he began to resist, until Anakin pressed deeper, invading his mind. The Kaminoan gasped, his will breaking under the sheer force of Anakin's rage. "The chips are for controlling the clones," Lama Su admitted, his voice strained. "The clones are a contingency for the Jedi Purge." Anakin's breath hitched. "Purge?" "Order 66. A storm raged in Anakin's mind. He knew Palpatine was hiding something, but this was worse than he had ever imagined. He released Lama Su, who collapsed against the wall. Anakin turned on his heel, his purpose clear. He was going to the Jedi Temple, and then he was going after the Chancellor himself. The halls of the Senate building were in chaos. Blaster fire screamed through the air as the 501st and 212th advanced, their armour stained with smoke and battle scars. But before they could reach the Chancellor's chambers, a blockade of red and white armour stood in their way. The Coruscant Guard. And at the front of them stood Commander Fox. His helmet was still on, but his posture radiated determination. The Coruscant Guard had their blasters raised, aiming at their own brothers. "Stand down, Fox." Rex stepped forward. his rifle lowered. You don't have to do this. Fox didn't move. The Chancellor ordered us to defend him. You are all traitors. Rex's fists clenched. We found the truth, Fox. The inhibitor chips. Palpatine placed them in all of us. He planned to wipe out the Jedi, to turn the Republic into an empire under his sole rule. Lies. Fox's voice was cold, his loyalty absolute. You've been manipulated. The Chancellor is the only one who's ever looked out for us, and I'll die before I betray him. Rex took a slow breath. He could feel the weight of all the brothers standing behind him. The 501st, the 212th, the clones who had been freed. He raised his DC-17. Then you leave us no choice. For a single, frozen second, neither side moved. Then, Fox fired the first shot. The room exploded into battle. Blaster bolts tore through the air as the two clone legions collided. The Coruscant Guard fought with brutal efficiency. Years of guarding the Republic's most important officials had turned them into elite warriors. But the 501st and 212th had fought on battlefields. They were seasoned warriors. Fox spun, taking down two troopers with pinpoint accuracy. Hold the line, he barked. His men fought harder, moving with precision, defending their position with sheer discipline. But they were outnumbered. Rex cut through the chaos, twin blasters roaring. Fox, stop this! Never! Fox lunged at Rex, slamming his gauntlet into his old friend's helmet. Rex staggered back, but countered, his elbow driving into Fox's chest. The two commanders grappled, their movements fueled by desperation and fury. Fox drew a vibroblade, swinging for Rex's throat. Rex barely ducked, but the blade sliced across his pauldron, leaving a smoking scar. He kicked Fox back, drawing his own knife in response. The fight was brutal. Both men knew each other's styles, their strikes countering each other perfectly. But Rex wasn't alone. A blue blur shot through the air. Jesse tackled Fox from behind, slamming him to the ground. Fox struggled, but he was outmatched. Rex stepped forward, his blaster aimed at his old brother's head. His voice was low. I wish it didn't have to be this way. Fox spat, his visor cracked. The Republic is dead without him. Rex's jaw tightened. Then he pulled the trigger. The shot struck Fox square in the chest. His body jerked, then went still. Silence fell over the hall. The last remnants of the Coruscant Guard lay scattered across the ground, their bodies motionless. The once great defenders of the Republic, wiped out by their own brothers. Jesse exhaled. It's done. Rex stared down at Fox's body, a weight settling in his chest. He had fought beside this man, trusted him. Now, he was gone. He took a slow breath and looked toward Anakin. Let's finish this. Anakin gave him a firm nod. And with that, they pressed forward, toward the Chancellor's chambers. The doors to the Supreme Chancellor's office exploded inward as Anakin, Obi-Wan, and a battalion of clone troopers stormed inside. Chancellor Palpatine stood at the center of the room, his face eerily calm. I take it, he said smoothly, that my secret is out. Anakin ignited his saber. It's over. Palpatine's lips curled into a smile. No, young Skywalker. It is just beginning. The Sith Lord raised his hands, lightning crackling between his fingers. Lightning screamed through the air. Anakin barely had time to raise his lightsaber before the storm of blue energy struck him. The force of it sent him skidding backward, his boots grinding against the polished floor. "Get to cover!" Rex roared to the troopers. The clones of the 501st and the 212th fanned out, blasters raised. Jesse and Apo fired first, their blue bows cutting through the darkness, only for Palpatine to twist his fingers, sending the shots back at them. Jesse barely rolled away in time. Obi-Wan surged forward, his lightsaber flashing in a blur of motion as he engaged the Sith Lord. "You've betrayed the Republic for the last time, Chancellor." Palpatine laughed, a sick, rasping sound, as he met Obi-Wan's blade with his own. "Foolish Jedi! You were all blind to the truth. You served me all along." Anakin lunged, his blue blade clashing against Palpatine's. Sparks flew as their sabers met in a flurry of strikes. "You will pay for your manipulation," Anakin snarled, driving forward with raw fury. His strength forced Palpatine back, his attacks raining down like a relentless storm. Palpatine ducked under a strike and sent a shockwave through the Force, sending Anakin crashing into the far wall. Rex and Cody charged forward with their troopers, unleashing a hail of blaster fire. Palpatine's second lightsaber ignited. A curved crimson blade flared to life in his left hand, spinning with unnatural speed. His movements were impossibly fast. One moment deflecting blaster bolts, the next slashing through troopers with terrifying precision. Jesse barely had time to scream before Palpatine's blade tore through his chest. "No!" Rex fired a shot directly at the Chancellor's head, but Palpatine twisted the Force around him, the shot curving off course. Obi-Wan pressed forward, his blade moving in refined, calculated defense. "Your reign ends today." Palpatine's golden eyes burned with malice. "The Jedi are weak. You never had the strength to stop me." He spun, his saber slashing at Obi-Wan's throat. A blue blade intercepted it at the last second. Anakin roared, his strength driving Palpatine back. "We'll see who's weak." The duel escalated. Anakin and Obi-Wan moved in perfect coordination. Anakin's raw power balanced by Obi-Wan's flawless technique. Their blades clashed against Palpatine's twin sabers, blue and red clashing in a blur of deadly light. The Chancellor hissed, weaving their strikes with unnatural speed. He spun, kicking Obi-Wan in the chest, sending him sprawling. Anakin saw red. He lunged, his blade cutting through the air with ferocity. Palpatine met his strikes, but Anakin pressed forward, raw power burning through his every move. Palpatine's expression flickered. For the first time, the Sith Lord was struggling. "You will fear me," Anakin snarled, his strikes pummeling against the Sith guard. "You fear what I will become." Palpatine gritted his teeth, forced to retreat. "You are mine, Skywalker." But Anakin's strength overwhelmed him. With a final roar, Anakin struck. His blade slashed through both Palpatine's sabers, cutting them in half. The Sith Lord staggered. Obi-Wan, recovered, leapt in, his blade piercing through Palpatine's stomach. The Chancellor screamed, his body convulsing. Anakin did not hesitate. With one final, decisive motion, he drove his lightsaber through the Sith Lord's chest. Palpatine shuddered, then collapsed to the floor, his golden eyes fading to nothing. The room fell silent. The Dark Lord of the Sith was dead. The Republic shook in the wake of Palpatine's death. With the Chancellor exposed as a Sith Lord, the Senate collapsed into chaos. The war ground to a halt. Separatist forces, leaderless, either surrendered or scattered into the Outer Rim. Every clone trooper underwent emergency surgery. The inhibitor chips, every single one, were removed. For the first time in their lives, the clones were free. Rex stood before the Senate, now clad in formal robes instead of armor. "I am not a politician," he said, voice steady. "I am a soldier. But today, I stand here as something more. The clones were created to fight, but we are not just weapons. We are people, and we deserve the right to choose our own future." The Senate chamber erupted into cheers. By popular vote, the clones were granted full citizenship. Rex was appointed as the first clone senator representing his brothers in the new republic. What if Captain Rex had led a successful clone rebellion? In the aftermath of Order 66 and the fall of the Republic, Captain Rex and Ahsoka Tano found themselves fugitives in a galaxy they once served. After narrowly escaping their own troops, manipulated by implanted inhibitor chips, they stood at a crossroads. "We need to lay low," Ahsoka urged, her voice heavy with the weight of recent events. "The Empire will be hunting down any remaining Jedi, and clones like you." Rex nodded, understanding her caution. "I agree, but I can't abandon my brothers. Many of them don't know the truth about the chips, about what they've been forced to do." Ahsoka placed a hand on his shoulder. "Be careful, Rex. The path you're choosing, it's dangerous." "I know," he replied, determination hardening his features. "But I have to try." With a final nod, they parted ways, Ahsoka to find refuge in the shadows, and Rex to ignite the spark of rebellion among his fellow clones. Rex's first priority was to locate and free as many clones as possible from the control of their inhibitor chips. His journey led him to the remote planet of Selos, where he discovered Gregor, a clone commando of the 212th, thought lost during the Clone Wars. "Rex, is it really you?" Gregor exclaimed, his eyes widening in disbelief. "It's me, Gregor," Rex confirmed, embracing his brother. "I need your help. There's a fight coming, and we can't sit it out." Together, they established the Clone Underground, a covert network dedicated to locating clones, removing their chips, and rallying them against the Empire. Through encrypted transmissions and secret rendezvous, they reached out to others. One such message found its way to Commander Hauser, who had been stationed on Rylot. "I've seen the Empire's oppression firsthand," Hauser admitted during a clandestine meeting. "Count me in." As their numbers grew, so did their resolve. But Rex knew they needed more than just soldiers. They needed specialists. The realization led him to seek out Echo, a clone enhanced with cybernetic modifications after his capture and presumed death. "Rex," Echo greeted, his mechanical hand whirring as he extended it. "I heard rumors you were stirring up trouble." "The kind of trouble you were born to handle," Rex replied with a grin. "We need you, Echo, and I think you know some others who'd be valuable to our cause." Echo's thoughts immediately went to Clone Force 99, the Bad Batch. They're not exactly the follow orders type, but they'll be interested. A meeting was arranged, and the Bad Batch, Hunter, Wrecker, Tech, Omega, and Crosshair, listened as Rex laid out his plan. "The Empire thinks they can control us," Rex stated, his voice firm. "But they underestimated our will. Together, we can free our brothers, and take back our freedom." Hunter nodded, his expression thoughtful. "We're in. We've never been ones to back down from a fight." With their combined expertise, the Clone Rebellion was poised to challenge the Empire's tyranny. Kashyyyk was under siege. The Empire had enslaved the Wookiees, and their cities burned. Rex knew if they wanted allies, This was where they had to fight next. Arriving in orbit, the clone fleet was immediately met with resistance. 3 Imperial Star Destroyers looming over the forest world. "Those aren't scout ships," Echo muttered. "They're here to wipe the Wookiees off the planet." "We're not letting that happen," Rex said. "Prepare for ground assault." As the first drop pods landed, clone troopers spilled into the dense underbrush, blasters firing as Imperial forces pushed through the trees. The Wookiees, led by Tarful, fought savagely, using guerrilla tactics, traps, and sheer brute strength to tear through stormtroopers. Rex and the Bad Batch pushed through enemy lines, disabling AT-ST walkers as explosions ripped through the jungles. As night fell, the Imperials deployed flame troopers, setting the jungle ablaze. The sky turned orange, smoke filling the air. "We're getting overwhelmed," Hauser shouted. Then, through the fire, a Wookiee war horn bellowed. A massive charge erupted from the tree line. Wookiee reinforcements stormed in, hurling troopers aside and tearing through their ranks. Tarful tackled an Imperial officer, lifting him high before hurling him off a cliff. Rex saw the opportunity. "Press the attack!" With the combined might of the Wookiees and clones, the Imperials were forced to retreat. As the battle ended, Tarful approached, Rex placing a massive hand on his shoulder. "You fight for our people," Tarful growled in Shriwook, which Tech translated. Rex nodded. "And I'll keep fighting, for all of us." With Kashyyyk liberated, the rebellion had its first true victory. From their victory on Kashyyyk, Rex and his growing rebellion turned their sights to another key world, Mon Cala. The aquatic world was under heavy Imperial rule. The Empire had installed a blockade, cutting off all trade supplies. Mon Calamari's shipyards were being repurposed to build Imperial cruisers, and the people were forced into submission. Admiral Akbar, once a leader of Mon Cala's defense forces, had gone into hiding. If they could free him and his people, they would gain not just an army, but one of the best naval tacticians in the galaxy. Rex's forces jumped out of hyperspace just outside the Mon Cala system. The Imperial blockade consisted of 3 Star Destroyers, numerous TIE squadrons, and aquatic assault ships. Echo studied the holodisplay. "This won't be easy." "Good thing we don't do easy," Gregor grinned. Tech, analyzing the fleet, formulated a strategy. "If we target the command cruiser's deflector shields, we can cause a chain reaction that will disable the blockade long enough to land troops." Rex nodded. "Then let's make it happen." The rebel fleet surged forward. Arc 170 starfighters weaved between TIE fighters, engaging in fierce dogfights. Y-Wings unleashed proton torpedoes, hammering Imperial cruisers. The Bad Batch, piloting their assault shuttle, cut through enemy lines, drawing fire away from the main fleet. Hunter's voice crackled over comms. "We're approaching the command cruiser." Crosshair, perched in the gunner seat, took down multiple TIE fighters with deadly precision. Rex, piloting alongside the fighters, issued the order. "All bombers, target the Star Destroyer's bridge." Explosions rocked the lead cruiser as its shields failed. The chain reaction spread across the blockade, allowing Rex's ground forces to descend upon the planet. As drop pods plunged into Mon Cala's oceans, clone divers and aquatic combat units emerged. Imperial aqua troopers engaged them in an intense battle beneath the waves. Mon Calamari resistance fighters swam through the depths, ambushing Imperial patrols. Squads of clones engaged in deep-sea dogfights, utilizing underwater jetpacks and harpoon launchers. Gungan shock troopers, sent by allies on Naboo, aided the assault, using electro-spears to disable enemy submersibles. Rex led the charge into the capital city, where Admiral Akbar and King Li Chair were being held prisoner. "Hold the line," Rex ordered, as the Imperials attempted to flood the tunnels, forcing the clones into close-quarters combat. Wrecker, wielding dual blaster cannons, laughed as he tore through enemy ranks. "Now this is a fight!" As the Imperials fell back, Admiral Akbar was freed from captivity. He stood before Rex and the others. "You have freed my people," he said solemnly. "Mon Cala owes you a great debt." Rex extended his hand. "Then join us. We're not done fighting." Akbar's expression hardened. "Neither are we." With Mon Cala's liberation, the rebellion gained a fleet of powerful Mon Calamari warships and one of the galaxy's greatest admirals. Their next target? Rylot. The dust of war had never truly settled on Rylot. The Twi'lek homeworld, once freed from separatist control, now suffered under the brutal grip of the Empire. Imperial forces had established slave camps, forcing Twi'leks into hard labor to fuel their war machine. The city of Lesu, once the heart of resistance, had become an Imperial stronghold, patrolled by clone shock troopers and AT-ST walkers. Cham Syndulla, leader of the Rylot resistance, had fought for years, but he was losing ground. Rex and his forces approached the world in their stolen Venator-class Star Destroyer, now repainted and retrofitted for the Clone Rebellion. Echo studied the tactical display. Lesu is heavily fortified. Imperial troopers and clone troopers are entrenched in every sector. Gregor smirked. "Good. I like a challenge." Rex, standing over the holotable, made his decision. "We're hitting them hard. No more hiding in the shadows. We will free Rylot, for good this time." The Clone Rebellion launched their first wave in the dead of the night. LAAT gunships soared over the city, releasing squads of rebel clones. Twi'lek freedom fighters emerged from the underground tunnels, hitting supply routes. ARC troopers infiltrated key enemy strongholds, disabling anti-air cannons. The Imperial response was swift. AT-STs stomped through the streets, firing at anything that moved. Imperial garrisons deployed squads of clone shock troopers, still loyal to the Empire. TIE bombers screamed overhead, unleashing destruction. Rex, Echo, and Hunter led the main charge. Rex sprinted through the war-torn streets, blasting Imperials with precise shots. "Push forward!" Echo, using his cybernetic scomplink, hacked into an AT-ST, causing it to turn on its fellow walkers. Hunter, using his enhanced senses, led the Bad Batch through the back alleys, silently eliminating Imperial officers to cripple their command structure. Cham Syndulla and his squad fought alongside them, their resistance fighters picking off Imperial squads. "Keep moving," Cham shouted, cutting down a stormtrooper with his blaster. "We take the Governor's Palace. We take Rylot." The final battle erupted at Lesu's central command center. The Clone Rebellion and Twi'lek forces stormed the gates, taking heavy fire. Crosshair found a perfect vantage point, sniping key enemy officers. Wrecker, wielding a massive rotary cannon, laughed as he mowed down Imperial squads. "Come on, you bucketheads! Let's see what you've got!" The Imperial Governor was cornered inside the main hall, surrounded by clone commandos. Rex stepped forward, blaster raised. "It's over. Surrender." The Governor sneered. "You may have taken Rylot, but the Empire will burn your rebellion to the ground." "Maybe," Rex said, "but not today." A single blaster shot ended the Governor's reign. The battle was won. Rylot was free. Chamsundula turned to Hauser, placing a hand on his shoulder. You have my warriors, Captain. Rylot stands with you once again. The rebellion was growing, but just as they celebrated, a distress signal pinged on Rex's communicator. Ahsoka Tano was in danger. Rex sat in the war room of the Venator-class Star Destroyer, staring at the holographic distress signal. Ahsoka's voice crackled through the static. This is Fulcrum. I need assistance. I can't hold them off much longer. She was in trouble, and she wasn't alone. She's protecting someone, Echo observed. Looks like a Jedi youngling. Rex clenched his fists. Set course. We're going in. The Clone Rebellion jumped into hyperspace, racing towards Ahsoka's last known location. As they emerged over a small outer rim world, they found Ahsoka's transport under attack by an Imperial force. A Raider-class corvette loomed over the battlefield. Imperial purge troopers, black-armored enforcers trained to kill Jedi, swarmed the landing site below. At the center of it all, an Inquisitor stood waiting, a double-bladed red lightsaber humming in the darkness. The battle erupted as clone dropships rained from the sky. Rex, Echo, and the Bad Batch landed first, cutting down Imperial squads with blaster fire. Crosshair perched on a rocky ridge, sniping purge troopers before they could reach Ahsoka's position. Wrecker charged headfirst, tossing troopers aside like ragdolls. At the center of the battle, Ahsoka stood protecting a young Rodian child, her lightsaber spinning defensively. The Inquisitor approached, blade twirling in a menacing blur. You can't protect the child forever, he hissed. Surrender, and I'll make your death painless. Ahsoka smirked. You Inquisitors talk too much. The duel ignited. The Inquisitor lashed out, attacking with lightning-fast strikes. Ahsoka countered, with precise acrobatic movements deflecting his attacks. Sparks flew as their blades clashed in deadly rhythm. The Inquisitor used the Force to hurl debris, but Ahsoka leapt through the air, dodging effortlessly. Rex saw his chance. Aim for the Inquisitor's footing, he ordered. Crosshair fired a pinpoint shot, blasting the ground beneath the Inquisitor's feet. He stumbled just for a moment, but it was enough. Ahsoka struck. Her lightsaber slashed across his chest. The Inquisitor fell to his knees, gasping. Rex stood over him, blaster raised. We're done here. One final shot ended the Inquisitor's hunt. Ahsoka turned to Rex, breathing heavily. Thank you for coming. Rex holtered his blaster. I'll always come. She looked at the freed child in her arms. There are more of them out there, Rex. More Jedi. More children. She made her decision. I'm staying. I'll fight with you. The Clone Rebellion had its first Jedi, but the Empire wasn't finished with them yet. The victories of the Clone Rebellion had not gone unnoticed. Across the Outer Rim, world after world had been freed from Imperial control. Kamino, Kashyyyk, Mon Cala, Rylot, and now Mandalore. Each planet liberated, each victory a message to the galaxy. The Empire could be defied, but defiance demanded a price, and Darth Vader had come to collect. Barlet was a barren, windswept world, an old Republic outpost that had fallen into Imperial hands. Now it was a key staging ground for the Clone Rebellion, serving as a rally point for new recruits, Jedi fugitives, and freed clones. But today it was a battlefield. Rex stood on the bridge of the Resolute, his hands clenched behind his back as he studied the holographic war table. Beside him, Ferren Barr, A former Jedi Padawan studied the Imperial fleet descending upon them. "We've been drawn into a trap," Barr muttered, his eyes narrowing. "This isn't a standard Imperial response. This is calculated. That's because it's him," Rex whispered. The hologram of the Imperial formation showed a large Star Destroyer, flanked by TIE interceptors in tight, aggressive formation. Turbolaser fire rained down with precise timing, cutting off escape vectors and forcing them into a tactical bottleneck. "Hauser!" Rex barked into his comms. "Pull your forces back! This isn't a fight we can win!" Static crackled. Then Hauser's voice came through, gritted with urgency. "We're trying! The Empire's cutting us off! They knew exactly where we'd be!" Then came the sound of a lightsaber igniting. A deep, mechanical breathing filled the comms, and Rex knew. Vader was already on the battlefield. The city of Barlet was engulfed in chaos. Stormtroopers poured in from dropships, cutting down clone rebels and freedom fighters alike. AT-ATs lumbered through the street, firing turbolaser blasts that shattered buildings. And at the center of it all, Vader. His crimson blade carved through clone after clone, moving with unstoppable momentum. A clone sergeant fired a rocket at him. Vader caught it mid-air and sent it flying back, obliterating the squad. A Mandalorian warrior tried to engage him. Vader ripped her jetpack apart with the Force and impaled her before she hit the ground. A clone lieutenant barked orders over the comms. Vader ripped the comlink from his hand, along with his entire arm, before crushing his throat with the Force. Through the smoke, Ferren Barr stepped forward. His lightsaber hummed to life. "It was always going to come to this, wasn't it?" Barr muttered. Vader stopped, just for a moment, tilting his head. Barr smirked, twirling his lightsaber. "I guess I don't have to win. I just have to stall you." Then he lunged. Barr was a skilled duelist, having survived Order 66 by outmaneuvering clones and Imperial agents alike. He had trained in Form 5, Gem So, an aggressive combat style meant to redirect attacks and break through defenses. But against Vader, it wasn't enough. Their sabers clashed, the impact sending shockwaves through the war-torn streets. Barr sidestepped a brutal overhead strike, countering with a quick slash. Vader caught his blade with one hand. The Jedi twisted away, using the Force to send a shockwave of debris toward Vader. Vader walked through it without slowing. Barr leapt onto a fallen AT-ST, using the high ground to gain an advantage. Vader reached out and wrenched the entire walker down, sending Barr crashing with it. Barr rolled to his feet, breathing heavily. Vader hadn't even broken a sweat. "You fight like a child," Vader rumbled, stalking forward. Barr lunged again, this time aiming for Vader's exposed respirator. Vader caught his wrist mid-air. In a single, crushing motion, he snapped Barr's arm. The Jedi screamed as his lightsaber clattered to the ground. "You were a fool to challenge me." Vader drove his crimson blade through Barr's chest. The Jedi convulsed. His eyes flickered in shock. Then, he was gone. Rex and Echo had watched it all unfold from the Resolute, listening through comms. "Hauser, pull out now," Rex shouted. Static. Then, Hauser's ragged breathing came through. "Rex, you were right." Vader's lightsaber hummed. "Tell the men to fight to the last." A scream. Then silence. Vader had wiped out their entire force, and Rex's rebellion had suffered its first major loss. The command center was chaos as Echo and Tech tried to calculate a jump point. "Rex, we need to go," Echo shouted. Rex stood frozen, staring at the holographic battlefield. His mind raced, haunted by the tactics, the movements, the sheer brutality of the enemy commander. These were tactics he had seen before, tactics he had helped implement. This wasn't just some Imperial officer, it was Anakin Skywalker. But he was gone. The man who had led them through the Clone Wars was dead. In his place stood a monster. Rex clenched his fists. "We'll make him pay for this." The ship jumped to hyperspace, leaving Barlett behind, and the clone rebellion licked its wounds. But Rex was already planning his next move. They couldn't defeat Vader head on, so they had to outmaneuver him, and for that, they needed a trap. The clone rebellion had suffered a brutal loss. Ferren Barr and Hauser were dead. Hundreds of clones had fallen, and Vader had shattered their forces at Barlett. But Rex had learned something. Vader wasn't just some ruthless Imperial enforcer. He was using Anakin Skywalker's tactics, and that meant Rex could outmaneuver him. The war table aboard the Resolute was surrounded by some of the rebellion's top minds. Rex, Echo, Tech, Bo-Katan, Cham Syndulla, Admiral Akbar, and Ahsoka. "We can't take him head on," Bo-Katan stated, arms crossed. "We saw what he did on Barlett. If we go after him directly, we'll lose everything." "But we don't need to fight him directly," Echo countered. "We need to lure him." Rex nodded, pointing to the holomap. "Vader's aggressive. He leads from the front, just like Anakin did. He always takes the fight personally." Ahsoka remained quiet, staring at the holo image of the Sith Lord. She hadn't really spoken since the revelation about her old master. Rex continued. "We hit an Imperial target, a critical one. Vader will come himself. We lead him into a system where his fleet can't follow, force him to engage personally, and then we spring the trap." Tech tapped on his datapad. "There's an uninhabited moon in the Darrow system. Strong gravity well, asteroid debris field, high radiation from a dying star. If we disable his ship there, he's stranded." "Even if you pull this off," Cham said, "how do we stop him once he's grounded?" Rex took a deep breath. "We won't be fighting Vader. There is no other way off the moon. If his ship is disabled, he will be stranded." To draw Vader out, the rebellion needed a high-value Imperial target. Their choice? An Imperial supply depot on Lothal. This facility controlled supply lines to Coruscant. It housed experimental weapon shipments. More importantly, it was defended just enough to be worthy of Vader's attention. Rex led the assault personally, bringing a strike force of ARC troopers, Mandalorians, and Wookiee warriors. Explosions rocked the depot as the clones and Mandalorians stormed the complex. Blaster fire illuminated the night, and Rex cut down stormtroopers with brutal precision. Cham Syndulla's Twi'lek forces sabotaged the fuel lines, causing a chain reaction of detonations. Echo hacked the facility's communications. "We've intercepted their distress call." A familiar voice came through the static. "This is Lord Vader. I will handle this personally." Rex's jaw clenched. It was working. Vader arrived in his TIE Advanced, flanked by a squadron of elite TIE interceptors. The moment he entered the system, the clone rebellion jumped to hyperspace. except for a single gunship. Rex and Echo, aboard the modified LAAT, remained behind long enough for Vader to attach a tracking fob to their ship. Then, they jumped. Vader's TIE was equipped with a hyperdrive, and he immediately jumped to follow them, not even telling his Imperial counterparts what he was doing. He would not need them. When he came out of hyperspace, he quickly realized he had been lured into a trap. The entire fleet that had jumped away were waiting on the counterattack for him. As the best fighter pilot in the galaxy, he took dozens of ships down, but the Marauder fired a homing missile. The shot struck true. Vader's TIE lurched, its systems flickering. For a moment, it seemed like he might recover. But the gravity well of Dodaro Moon pulled him in. He crashed. The most dangerous man in the galaxy was stranded. With Vader out of the fight, the Clone Rebellion had its best chance yet. Now they would take the fight to Coruscant itself. They had one final target, Palpatine, and this time they wouldn't fail. The massive doors to the Imperial throne room opened with a deep mechanical groan. Inside, Darth Sidious stood at the center of the chamber, draped in black and crimson robes. The flickering light of Coruscant's burning skyline poured through the vast windows, casting shadows across the polished black floors. His sunken, sickly yellow eyes gleamed with amusement as he gazed upon the warriors who dared to challenge him. At the front of the group stood Ahsoka Tano, her white lightsabers humming softly in the eerie silence. Beside her, Quinlan Voss and Asajj Ventress moved into positions, their weapons ignited. Behind them, hundreds of clone troopers took formation, flanked by the Bad Batch, Bo-Katan Kryze, Cham Syndulla, Admiral Akbar, Tarful, and all their respective warriors. They had come to end the Sith. Sidious chuckled, a low, guttural laugh that echoed through the chamber like the whispers of the dead. You have come so far, only to fall. Without warning, he raised both his hands. A colossal storm of Sith lightning erupted from his fingertips, turning the air into a web of crackling energy. Screams filled the room as clones were disintegrated instantly. Bo-Katan barely managed to jet back away, while Cham Syndulla threw himself behind cover. Sidious stepped forward, his power engulfing the room. But Rex and his team had planned for this. The trap was in motion. Crosshair had positioned himself across the room, his visor locked onto the target. With a flick of his wrist, he deployed his ricochet bouncers, scattering dozens of reflective discs around the chamber. The moment the first shot fired, the Emperor reacted. Crosshair's sniper rifle barked as he shot one bouncer after another. Blaster bolts ricocheted unpredictably through the room, bouncing at impossible angles, forcing Sidious to twist, duck, and evade with inhuman reflexes. For the first time in decades, Darth Sidious was on the defensive. Amusing, Sidious snarled, spinning his saber to deflect a bolt. As Sidious dodged a barrage, Wrecker, a massive wall of muscle and fury, charged at full force. You want power? Here's some power! The impact was earth-shattering. Wrecker smashed into Sidious, sending the Sith Lord skidding backward, forcing him to lash out with a violent force push. The blast hurled Wrecker across the room, slamming him into a pillar. But it bought time, because Ahsoka was already moving. Sidious barely had time to recover before Ahsoka lunged from behind. She was a blur of white light, her sabers slicing downward. Sidious twisted, barely parrying her attack, his strength pressing against hers. Their blades locked. For a moment, Ahsoka could see everything. The centuries of Sith power, the hatred fueling his existence. Then Ventress struck from above. Asajj Ventress dropped from the ceiling like a phantom, twin red sabers spinning as she slashed at the Emperor's exposed back. Sidious hissed, twisting just in time to block. But now he was surrounded. Ahsoka on his left, Ventress on his right, Quinlan Vos closing from the front, clones and Mandalorians circling him like wolves, even with all his unnatural speed, all his mastery over the Force. Sidious couldn't fight them all. You dare! He unleashed another Force blast. Ahsoka and Ventress were sent flying. Quinlan Vos tried to dodge, but the Emperor's saber sliced through his shoulder, cutting deep. More clone troopers died in an instant. Sidious's power was too much. He unleashed a torrent of Force lightning, bearing down on Ahsoka, Ventress, and Vos simultaneously. Across the room, Echo stood firm. His cybernetic arm whined as he calibrated his DC-17 blaster. His mind flashed back to a different time, to another life, to Fives, his brother, the one who had tried to warn them all, the one murdered by this very Sith Lord's deception. Echo exhaled, and then he fired. The bolt struck true, right through Sidious's chest. The Sith Lord's body jerked violently. His eyes went wide. He had been too engulfed in his rage to react to the shot. Echo holstered his blaster. That one was for Fives. Sidious staggered, clutching his wound. Dark energy leaked from him, his veins blackening. His once commanding voice became a rasp. No, this is not how it was foreseen. Ahsoka stepped forward, lightsaber raised. The future is ours. And with one final, unstoppable swing, Ahsoka beheaded Darth Sidious. His body collapsed. The room fell silent. The Emperor of the Sith was dead. The Empire fell within hours. Coruscant's skies cleared, the rebellion declaring victory. The clones, Jedi, and freedom fighters stood together. A new era was born from the ashes. For Rex, however, the war was finally over. He stood amidst the ruins, looking at the clones who had fought and died beside him. He closed his eyes. For Fives. For Hauser. For all the brothers he had lost along the way. He made a vow that they would never be forgotten. Because they had been more than just soldiers. They had been brothers. On Darrow, Vader stirred. The sound of a shuttle. His salvation was here. What if Captain Rex had to hunt down a rogue clone? Rex stood at the viewport of his quarters aboard the Venator-class Star Destroyer, the Resolute, arms crossed, deep in thought. He had fought countless battles, stood side by side with Jedi and his brothers alike, yet one betrayal still gnawed at him. Slick. It had been months since the clone sergeant's treachery at Christophsis. The man who once swore loyalty to the Grand Army of the Republic had turned on them, selling them out to the Separatists in the name of freedom. Rex had always believed in the Republic, in duty, in the brotherhood of the clones. And yet, Slick had chosen a different path, one that cost the lives of good men. Now, intelligence report suggests that Slick was still alive, operating in the Outer Rim under a variety of aliases. The knowledge reignited something in Rex. This wasn't just another mission. It was personal. Admiral Yularen's voice crackled over the comm. Captain, we've traced movements on Nar Shaddaa that match your target. It's not confirmed, but the probability is high. Rex didn't hesitate. He grabbed his helmet, slung his blaster over his shoulder, and made his way to the hangar. He would find Slick, and this time, he would not let him escape. Nar Shaddaa was a cesspool of crime, a place where war barely mattered. Smugglers, bounty hunters, and desperate refugees filled the neon-lit streets, and danger lurked in every corner. If Slick was hiding anywhere, this was the perfect place. Rex moved cautiously, his armor disguised under a tattered cloak. He pushed through the crowds, scanning every face. He had secured a lead, an arms dealer who supposedly did business with a clone soldier just days ago. Inside a dimly lit cantina, Rex found the Rhodian dealer slumped over a table, a blaster burn still smoking in his chest. Someone had been here first. A deep voice growled behind him. "You're a little too late, trooper." Rex turned just as a pair of bounty hunters flanked him. One was a Weequay wielding a vibro axe, the other a Trandoshan with a rifle levelled at his chest. Slick was expecting him. The cantina's patrons had already cleared out, sensing the tension in the air. The neon lights flickered as the two bounty hunters took slow steps towards Rex, weapons at the ready. "Slick knew you'd come looking," the Weequay sneered, twirling his vibro axe. "He's paying good credits to make sure you don't leave Nar Shaddaa alive." Rex tensed, scanning the room for exits. The Trandoshan tightened his grip on the trigger, his reptilian eyes locking onto Rex's every move. Rex acted first. In a split second, he drew his blaster and fired. The Trandoshan's rifle went off, the shot grazing Rex's shoulder, but his own bolt struck through, right in the reptile's chest. The Weequay roared and lunged with his axe. Rex barely dodged, feeling the blade slice the air where his head had been a second before. The fight was brutal. The Weequay was bigger, stronger, and fought with sheer ferocity. Rex relied on his speed, ducking and weaving between attacks. He caught the Weequay's wrist, twisting hard. The axe clattered to the floor, and Rex wasted no time. He slammed his armored fist into the bounty hunter's faceplate, then grabbed his blaster and fired. The Weequay collapsed with a smoking hole in his chest. Rex panted, checking his wound. A graze, nothing serious. Rex searched the bodies, finding a small comm on the Weequay's belt. He activated it, and a distorted voice crackled through. "Is it done?" Rex remained silent. The voice continued. "I've got new coordinates. Get rid of the body and meet me on Ord Mantell." Rex smirked beneath his helmet. He had a new lead. Rex moved quickly, heading to his ship docked in a nearby hangar. Ord Mantell was a known haven for criminals, mercenaries, and separatist sympathizers. If Slick was moving there, he had a plan. One that likely involved selling information to the highest bidder. As the ship broke through hyperspace, Rex sat in the cockpit, staring at the stars streaking past. His mind wasn't on the mission's logistics, it was on Slick. He remembered Christophsis like it was yesterday. The bitter sting of betrayal when he discovered Slick had turned against him. Not because he was forced to, not because of manipulation, but because he believed in it. Brothers are bred for combat. We're just tools for the Republic. Slaves. Slick's words still burned in Rex's mind. He knew some clones questioned their purpose. He knew many struggled with the idea that they had no future beyond war. But to betray their own? To sell out the Republic that had given them everything? That, Rex could never forgive. The ship's console beeped. Ord Mantell was ahead. Rex gripped the controls, pushing his anger down. Ord Mantell was just as grimy and lawless as Rex remembered. Dark alleys, neon-lit signs advertising illicit dealings, and a stench of desperation clung to the air. Information was currency here, and Slick had plenty to sell. Rex didn't move recklessly. He kept his helmet on, blending in as another armed mercenary in the crowded streets. He visited informants, bribed bartenders, and listened for rumors of a rogue clone making deals. It took hours, but finally he got a lead. A gang of Weequay smugglers had been hired by a mysterious military consultant to arrange a meeting with separatist agents. The location? A rundown slum on the edge of the city, an area crawling with droids and low-life criminals. Rex set off immediately. He kept to the shadows, moving quickly through the back streets. As he approached the slum, he slowed, surveying the area. And then he saw them. B-1 battle droids patrolled the perimeter, their skeletal forms moving through the rubble-strewn streets. A few BX series commando droids stood near a rundown building, scanning for threats. Rex's gut twisted. This wasn't just Slick's safe house. This was a separatist protected stronghold. Slick was already making his move. Rex ducked behind cover and activated his comms. General Skywalker, I need reinforcements. Static crackled before Anakin's voice came through, strained with exertion. Rex, I'm in the middle of a fight here. Blaster fire echoed in the background, followed by the unmistakable hum of a lightsaber. Rex clenched his fists. Slick's making a deal with the separatists. He's under their protection. If we don't act now, he'll sell them everything he knows. A pause. Then, alright, I'm sending Fives on his squad. Hold position until they arrive. Rex exhaled, tension easing slightly. Slick's time was running out. Rex remained crouched in the shadows, watching the separatist patrols move through the slum. His fingers twitched against the trigger of his blaster. Every instinct screamed at him to move, to finish this before Slick could escape again, but he held himself back. Reinforcements were on the way. That meant Fives was on his way, and Rex knew better than to rush into a separatist stronghold alone. Minutes dragged on, the anticipation gnawing at him. Then, through the static of his comms, a familiar voice crackled to life. Rex, this is Fives, reporting in. We've got boots on the ground. Rex exhaled, relief washing over him. He turned his visor to the rooftops above, scanning for movement. Then he saw them, shadows moving in perfect formation. A squad of elite clones, led by none other than Fives himself. Beside him, Echo adjusted his vambrance, scanning the separatist defences. Top crouched, sniper rifle in hand, while Hardcase and Jesse checked their weapons. These weren't just any clones. These were some of the best clones the Republic had ever trained. And now, they were here for justice. Rex clicked his comms. Good to see you, Fives. Fives smirked beneath his helmet. Wouldn't miss it. So, where's our rat? Rex pointed toward the heavily guarded building. Inside, making a deal with the separatists. Jesse let out a low whistle. That explains the extra security. They're not just protecting Slick, they're protecting whatever intel he's selling. Fives nodded. Then we hit them hard and fast. No time for subtlety. We breach, eliminate hostiles, and take Slick alive. Hardcase grinned. You had me at hit them hard. Rex couldn't help but smirk. This was how it was meant to be. Brothers, side by side. For a moment, he let himself believe this was just another mission. But this wasn't just a mission. This was personal. The clones moved like ghosts, weaving through the ruins and rubbles of the slum. The separatist droids patrolled in lazy, predictable patterns that Rex and Fives had already memorized. Rex raised a clenched fist. The squad froze. 2 commando droids guarded the back entrance, their sensors scanning the streets. Echo tapped a command into his vambrance. A small pulse emitted from his wrist, jamming the droids' comms. Before they could react, Jesse and Top opened fire. Twin headshots sent the droids crashing to the ground in sparking heaps. Fives grinned. Nice and quiet, just how I like it. Rex moved up, signaling the rest of the squad to follow. We breach in 60 seconds. Once we're in, keep the corridors clear. No one gets out. Hardcase smirked. I'm looking forward to this. Rex didn't reply. He was here for Slick. The explosion rocked the slum as Hardcase blew the side entrance. The clones stormed in, blasters raised, weapons barking out rapid-fire destruction. B-1 battle droids barely had time to process what was happening before they were torn apart by precise clone fire. The commando droids fought back, their reflexes faster, their aim sharper, but the clones of the 501st were veterans. They knew how to counter them. Echo fired a burst into the droid servos, disabling its joints. Fives spun and slammed his vibroblade into another's chassis, sending it collapsing to the floor. Rex didn't stop. He cut through the droids like a man possessed, his focus locked on one goal: Slick. He reached the door at the far end of the compound and kicked it open. Inside, standing over a holotable filled with separatist schematics, was Slick. And he was smiling. Slick's grin was that of a man who had already won. He stood tall, arms folded, though the very idea of Rex finding him was amusing. Took you long enough, Captain. Rex didn't lower his blasters. His stance was rigid, muscles coiled tight with restrained fury. It's over, Slick. Slick chuckled, shaking his head. You still don't get it, do you? The Republic is dead, Rex. The Seppies are just going to replace you, toss you aside like scrap metal. Me? He gestured to the separatist holodisplay. I'm making sure I end up on the winning side. Rex gripped his blaster. You betrayed your brothers. You sold us out for credits. And now, you're trying to join forces with the separatists? Slick took a step forward, voice laced with mock pity. No, Rex. I'm trying to survive. Rex barely resisted the urge to shoot him on the spot. The separatists don't care about you. You think they're going to trust a clone? After everything? You're nothing but a pawn to them. Slick scoffed. And what were we to the Republic? Disposable soldiers bred for war. I see the truth, before the rest of you. Before you, before Cody, before Fives, before all of you. I am the first to break free. And now, you're the ones who's too blind to see what's coming next. Rex took another step forward. What's coming next is you answering for your crimes. Slick's grin faltered, but before he could respond, an explosion rocked the building. The separatist guards outside had finally realized what was happening. The air filled with a sharp whine of blaster fire and the mechanical stomping of approaching droids. Rex's comm crackled to life. Rex, we've got incoming. A whole platoon of clankers just dropped in, and they're bringing heavy guns. Five's voice was urgent but steady. Rex didn't hesitate. He lunged at Slick, slamming the traitor against the holotable, pinning him down. This is over. But Slick only smirked. Not yet. He threw his weight forward, twisting out of Rex's grasp and sprinting for the exit. Rex fired, but Slick was fast, diving behind cover as blaster bolts sizzled past. The chase was on. Outside, the battle was in full force. Separatist reinforcement had arrived in numbers. B-2 super battle droids stomped through the narrow streets, their wrist blasters hammering the clone positions. A squad of commando droids moved with terrifying precision, scaling rooftops to flank the clones below. Rex burst from the building just in time to see Slick weaving through the carnage, ducking behind the separatist transport. "I have eyes on the target," Rex barked into his comms. "He's making for the east side." "We'll cut him off," Echo's voice crackled through. "Tup, hard case, on me." Rex pressed forward, weaving through the firefight. A pair of super battle droids turned their cannons towards him, but before they could fire, Jesse launched a thermal detonator straight into their ranks. The explosion sent them crashing into the rubble. Five sprinted up beside Rex, breathing hard. "Slick?" "Still running." Fives gave a humorless chuckle. Typical. The two of them advanced, firing in sync as they cut through the remaining droids. The clones were willing to battle, but the fight wasn't over yet. Slick had reached an abandoned speeder bike, its engine sputtering to life as he leapt onto it. Rex knew this was his last chance. "Cover me!" he shouted. Fives and Jesse laid down suppressive fire as Rex sprinted forward, pushing himself to his limits. He reached for his blaster, took aim. A precise shot struck the speeder's repulsor lift, sending it spiraling out of control. Slick barely had time to cry out before he was flung from the bike, crashing hard into the dirt. Rex was on him in an instant, pinning the traitor down. Slick groaned, coughing as he tried to push himself up. But this time, there was no escape. "It's over," Rex said. "You're coming with us." Slick let out a weak, bitter laugh. "And what are you going to do, Captain? Lock me up? Execute me? You think that'll make you feel better?" Rex didn't answer. He just tightened his grip. Five stepped forward, looking down at Slick with cold, unreadable eyes. "You don't get to choose what happens next." Slick sighed, shoulders slumping in defeat. "Guess not." The battle around them had ended. The separatist forces wiped out. The clones stood victorious, and the traitor was finally in custody. Rex exhaled slowly, the weight of the mission finally setting in. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about justice. And justice had been served. What if Captain Rex had to go to battle against Commander Cody? Rex sat in the command deck of the Resolute, his mind deep in thought as the ship drifted through hyperspace. The Clone Wars had thrown him and his brothers into countless battles, each more grueling than the last. The fight had become a part of him, as natural as breathing, but nothing compared him for what came next. "Captain, we're receiving a distress signal," came the voice of Jesse from the comm station. Rex turned to face him, already reading the tension on the trooper's face. "Who's sending it?" Jesse hesitated before responding. "It's Commander Cody, sir." The room fell silent. Cody? Rex stepped forward as Jesse patched through the message. The transmission was garbled with static, but Cody's voice was clear enough to understand. "This is Commander Cody of the 212th Attack Battalion. We've been ambushed. Casualties heavy. Survivors captured. Coordinates attached. Requesting immediate assistance." Rex's grip tightened around the console. Cody never asked for help before. If he was calling for a rescue, things had to be bad. Anakin Skywalker, standing nearby with arms crossed, frowned at the transmission. "Sounds like they're in deep trouble, Rex. What do you think?" Rex's mind raced. He had fought side by side with Cody since the early days of the war. If there was any chance his old friend was alive, he had to act. "We should go after them," Rex said firmly. "Set course for the coordinates." Anakin nodded. You're in charge of this one, Rex. The 501st is yours to lead. With that, the ship lurched as it veered toward the unknown world, carrying Rex toward a battle he could never have prepared for. As the Resolute exited hyperspace, the planet loomed ahead, its surface covered in vast rocky plains and jagged mountains. It was desolate, an ideal place for an ambush. The 501st deployed LAAT gunships, descending into the murky atmosphere. Rex stood at the front of the lead gunship, scanning the barren landscape below. Something felt wrong. Jesse, sitting across from him, adjusted his helmet. I don't like this, sir. Why would the Separatists just leave Cody alive long enough to send a distress call? Exactly, Rex muttered. Something's off. As the gunships landed, the troopers spread out, securing the perimeter. The distress beacon was active, but there was no signs of the 212th. Rex motioned to Kix, the squad's medic. Check the beacon. Kix knelt and ran a scanner over the device. After a moment, his visor snapped up. Sir, this beacon was remotely activated. A cold realization hit Rex like a punch to the gut. It's a trap, he shouted. Defensive positions, now! Blaster fire erupted from the ridges above. Clones poured out, heavy cannons opening fire. The 501st scrambled for cover as blue laser bolts raised down. The battlefield erupted into chaos, with Rex barking orders over the comm. Jesse and Tup dragged a wounded trooper to safety, as Hardcase unleashed covering fire with his Z6 rotary cannon. Echo and Fives pushed forward, flanking the opposition. But something was different. The enemy tactics, their armor. It was the 212th. Rex gritted his teeth. Cody had set this up. Rex quickly adapted, ordering the 501st to form a counter-offensive. Echo, Fives, flank their snipers. Jesse, get our heavy gunners in place. Hardcase, lay down suppressive fire. The 501st executed his orders with precision, turning the tide. As Echo and Fives eliminated the enemy snipers, the 501st pushed forward, clearing a path through the enemy lines. But then, another wave arrived. Clone troopers, moving in perfect formation. Waxer, Boyle, Trapper, Barlex. The moment was surreal. Their visors were cold, their actions unnatural. Sir, they aren't responding to comms, Jesse muttered. They must be being controlled, Rex realized. His grip on his blaster tightened. This wasn't just a rescue mission anymore. This was a war against his own brothers. Rex sat at the holotable inside their makeshift command center, staring at the battlefield reports. Enemy engagement with the 212th had been brutal, not because of sheer numbers, but because of the enemy's tactics. Every time they made a move, Cody countered it. Every feint, every ambush, every attempted breakthrough. It was as if Cody knew Rex's strategies before he even made them. Jesse leaned over the table. Sir, we can't keep hitting them head on. It's like fighting a mirror of ourselves. Fives crossed his arms. Then we break the mirror. Rex exhaled, looking at the holomap. We need to change how we fight. Cody knows how I lead, but I also know how he leads. He glanced up at his men. We'll hit them in 4 stages of battle, each one different. We force Cody to react in ways he doesn't expect. We break his rhythm and turn the tide in our favour. The 501st nodded, determination setting in. Cody positioned a large force of 212th clones in a narrow ravine, the high rock walls giving his men natural cover. Droids and mind-controlled clones held the bottleneck, while snipers took positions in the cliffs above. Cody was forcing a frontal assault, ensuring the 501st had nowhere to run. Rex anticipated this. Cody wanted them to charge the narrow pass, but Rex had no intention of taking the obvious path. Instead, he ordered a fake retreat, making it look as if the 501st was falling back in disarray. Cody, seeing the opportunity, pushed forward, sending his forces out of the ravine in pursuit. That was when Hardcase and Echo's squads emerged from hidden caves, catching the 212th in a crossfire. Explosions ripped through the canyon as 501st rocket troopers blasted down the snipers' nests above. With their high ground advantage gone, the 212th was forced to retreat back into the ravine, but the 501st had already set charges along the canyon walls. Rex gave the order. The charges detonated, collapsing sections of the cliffs and trapping the 212th forces inside. They weren't killed. Rex wasn't trying to wipe them out, but they were isolated and neutralized, leaving Cody with fewer troops to command. Cody had converted an old separatist supply depot into a fortified command post. He set up turrets, motion sensors, and trip mines, making it impossible to approach unseen. If Rex attempted a full assault, Cody's men would cut them down before they even reached the walls. But Rex didn't attack. He infiltrated. At nightfall, Fives and Jesse led a team of 501st commandos through the ventilation systems, using old separatist maintenance tunnels to bypass the outer defences. Once inside, they disabled the security grid, leaving Cody's men blind to the real attack. Hardcase and Tup then led a shock assault, overwhelming the depot from the inside out. Cody, realising his perimeter defences were useless, had to pull back, abandoning precious supplies and weaponry that now belonged to the 501st. Frustrated by his losses, Cody took the fight to a flat, open wasteland where he controlled the battlefield. Cody knew Rex favoured cover-based combat, so he denied it entirely. His forces burned the vegetation, leaving nothing but ash and open plains. Then, he deployed mobile artillery, hammering the 501st from extreme range. Rex didn't charge blindly. Instead, he had engineers set up a smoke launcher along the battlefield's edge. As the battle began, massive smoke clouds engulfed the field, blinding Cody's artillery gunners. Then, Rex's men used jetpacks to hop from cover to cover, using short bursts of flight to avoid the blind artillery fire. Before Cody could adjust, the 501st explosive team breached the artillery line, silencing the cannons. With his firepower neutralized, Cody had no choice but to fall back once again. Cody changed tactics, forcing Rex into a swampy jungle where visibility was low and ambushes were constant. The 212th used hit-and-run tactics, wearing the 501st down bit by bit. Rex knew Cody was trying to lure them deeper into the jungle, so he set a decoy battalion. Empty armour, rigged with movement sensors to make it look like an advancing squad. Cody's forces sprang the trap, revealing their positions, only to be ambushed in return. Rex's real forces attacked from all sides, forcing Cody's men to retreat. By now, Cody had lost most of his forces, but he wasn't done yet. His last stand took place in the ruins of an old separatist command center, a battlefield filled with half-destroyed droids, rusted tanks, and abandoned war machines. Rex walked forward, facing his oldest friend. Cody stood tall, blaster in hand. Well played, Rex. Rex didn't draw his weapon. What has happened to you, Cody? Cody hesitated. His body wasn't his anymore. The separatist mine probe, developed on Skako Minor, that had been implanted in every 212th trooper during their original ambush controlled his every move. But deep down, he was still Cody. Rex lowered his blaster. "Come back, Cody." For a moment, it looked like he would. But the mind probe forced Cody to attack. The duel was fast and brutal. Punches, dodges, blocks. Rex refused to kill Cody. Instead, he let Cody wear himself out, using defensive countermoves to buy time. In a final, desperate strike, Cody lunged, only for Rex to dismantle the mind probe with a precise EMP shot. Cody collapsed, gasping for breath. He was free. But the damage had already been done. As the battle ended, Cody looked at Rex. Did I kill any of our own?" Rex hesitated. "Yes." Cody shut his eyes. "Then I don't deserve to wear this armor anymore." Rex gripped Cody's shoulder. "We all deserve a second chance." And together they walked away, brothers, despite it all. What if Captain Rex was the secret mentor of Luke Skywalker in military strategy? The war was over. The Empire had fallen, its remnants scattered across the stars. But the war never truly ended. Captain Rex had spent years in shadows, watching the galaxy shift, observing the rise and fall of the rebellion, and hearing the whispers of a Jedi who had restored balance. Luke Skywalker. He had never met the boy, only heard stories of his exploits. A farm boy from Tatooine, heir to the Jedi, the one who had stood against Darth Vader and the Emperor himself. But when Rex first laid eyes on him, standing among the victorious rebels after the Battle of Endor, his heart clenched. Luke moved like him. His stance, his quiet confidence, the way his eyes scanned his surroundings as if seeing everything at once. It was Anakin Skywalker. For a moment, Rex wasn't on Endor. He was back on the Resolute, standing beside the man who had been both his general and his friend. The man who had fought for the Republic with every ounce of his being, who had thrown himself into battle without hesitation, who had trusted Rex with his life. And yet, it was Anakin's son standing before him now. Luke noticed the old clone studying him. He turned, offering a polite smile. "Captain Rex, I presume." Rex hesitated, swallowing down the emotions rising in his chest. He clenched a fist over his heart in salute. "That's me, General Skywalker." Luke's smile faltered. "I'm not a general." Rex smirked slightly, shaking his head. "Sorry, old habits." Rex knew the boy had learned the truth, had seen what his father had become, but he also saw something else in Luke's expression. Hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, his father had been more than Darth Vader. "I'd like to talk to you," Rex said, "about your father, about the man he was." Luke's blue eyes met Rex's, full of curiosity and longing. "I'd like that." And with that, the last surviving clone captain and the last Jedi walked together. The night was quiet on Endor, the embers of celebration still flickering in the distance. But here, at the edge of the rebel encampment, two men sat beside a small fire, one old, weary, and carrying the weight of countless battles, the other young, full of questions, and searching for answers about a father he barely knew. Luke leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees. "Tell me about him," he said softly. "Not Vader. My father. Anakin Skywalker." Rex exhaled slowly, staring into the flames. He was the finest warrior I ever knew. The best general in the Grand Army of the Republic. He shook his head, a small, distant smile tugging at the corner of his lips. And the most reckless one. Luke tilted his head, intrigued. Rex chuckled. You have no idea how many times we had to save his skin because he charged straight into battle without a second thought. I can't count the number of times I told him, General, maybe we should wait for reinforcements. And he'd just grin and say, We are the reinforcements, Rex. Luke's lips quirked into a small smile. He was a brother to us, Rex continued, his voice thick with old memories. Some Jedi kept their distance from us clones, saw us as soldiers, not people, but not Anakin. He fought beside us, bled with us, laughed with us. His expression darkened. He cared about us. That's what made him different. Luke was silent for a moment before speaking. And Ahsoka. Rex's smile returned, this time a little more genuine. Ah, Snips. She was something else. Luke's brow furrowed. Snips? Rex chuckled. Anakin gave her that name. She was his Padawan, his student. Young, stubborn, and smart. Anakin trained her himself, pushed her harder than any other Jedi would have, and she turned out to be one of the best. Luke seemed to take this in carefully. And you, he trusted you. Rex met Luke's gaze, with his life. There was a pause. Luke's fingers curled slightly, his voice barely above a whisper. Then why did Vader... Rex sighed. I ask myself that every day, kid. Silence settled between them, the fire crackling softly. Luke looked down, lost in thought. Then Rex spoke again, his voice steadier. But that's not all you need to know about him. Your father wasn't just a warrior, Luke. He was a tactician, the best battlefield commander I ever saw. He could outmaneuver entire separatist fleets, predict enemy movements before they happened, and turn the tide of a battle in seconds. Luke's eyes sharpened with interest. Rex leaned forward. That's why I want to teach you. Luke blinked. Teach me? Rex nodded. The Jedi were warriors, but they weren't soldiers. They never trained you to command. If you're going to lead the future of the Jedi, you need to know how to fight a war, and win. Luke hesitated. I don't want to fight another war. Rex sighed. Neither do I. But the Empire's remnants won't go down without a fight. You need to be ready. Luke studied the own clone for a long moment. Then, finally, he nodded. All right, teach me. Good. We start at sunrise. The forest clearing was silent except for the chirping of distant birds and the rustling of leaves. The sun had barely risen, casting golden light over the dew-covered ground. Luke stood in the middle of the clearing, dressed in his simple tunic, watching as Rex paced before him, hands behind his back. You may be the last Jedi, Rex began, but you don't have the training of a general. He met Luke's gaze. You were thrown into a war with the rebellion, but no one ever taught you how to command troops, how to read a battlefield, or how to think like a soldier. Luke nodded. He had led missions, made strategic decisions, but everything he knew had been learned in the moment, through instinct, trial, and error. He had never had a mentor in war, not the way his father had been trained. Rex bent down and picked up a long stick from the ground. Your father knew how to fight a war on every front. Space, ground, infiltration, siege. And that's what I want to teach you. He pointed the stick at Luke. Lesson 1. A soldier fights. A commander thinks. If you lead men into battle, You need to be 3 steps ahead of the enemy before the first shot is fired. Luke folded his arms. And how do I do that? Rex smirked. By playing war. He gestured towards a set of rough stones and branches he had arranged on the ground. Luke stepped closer and saw that it was a battlefield simulation, a miniature recreation of a skirmish. Small stones represented troops, while twigs marked terrain. This, Rex said, kneeling beside it, is a recreation of the Battle of Jabim, one of the worst losses in the Clone Wars. He pointed at one side. Republic forces here. Separatists here. Now, tell me, how would you win this battle? Luke crouched beside him, studying the setup. He saw the Republic troops positioned on high ground, with the Separatists below in the valley. It looked like a good position. The high ground gives the Republic an advantage. I'd hold position and force the enemy to attack uphill. Rex grunted. That's what General Lesk thought, and it got him and half his forces killed. Luke frowned. Why? Rex pointed at the Separatist side. They knew the Republic would rely on their high ground advantage, so they set up artillery in the surrounding ridges, boxed them in, and rained fire on them. The Republic was so focused on holding position, they didn't realize they were being surrounded. Luke exhaled sharply. So what should they have done? Rex moved a few stones. Instead of holding, they should have sent a small strike team to take the ridges first. Then, when the main attack came, they wouldn't have been trapped. Luke nodded slowly. It was a simple, yet brutal lesson. Wars are won before the first shot is fired, kid, Rex said, standing up. You don't fight the enemy's battle. You make them fight yours. Luke absorbed the words, looking down at the battlefield. The more he thought about it, the more he realized that war wasn't just about strength or courage. It was about outthinking the enemy at every turn. Rex patted him on the shoulder. Let's see if you can put that to use. It wasn't long before Luke got his chance to apply what he learned. A New Republic scout team had picked up signals from an Imperial remnant stronghold on a remote world in Mid-Rim. Intelligence suggested that a warlord, a former Imperial officer clinging to the old ways, was using the outpost as a base to regroup his forces. The New Republic needed the base neutralized before it could become a greater threat. Luke had volunteered to lead the mission. Rex had insisted on coming with him. This is your test, he had said. You lead. I'll advise. Now, standing aboard a New Republic shuttle, looking at the holomap of the Imperial base, Luke felt the weight of command for the first time. The mission had seemed simple at first. Destroy the command center, scatter the remaining forces. But now, as he looked at the enemy's positioning, he realized it was anything but. The base is heavily fortified, a New Republic officer pointed out. Anti-air turrets, stormtrooper garrisons, patrols. A direct assault would be suicide. Luke nodded. Then we don't attack them directly. Rex smirked in the background, arms folded. Luke pointed to the map. We send a small team to disable the anti-air defences first. Once that's done, we'll launch a distraction at the main gate, while a second team infiltrates from the eastern ridge and takes out their command centre. One of the officers frowned. That's risky. If the infiltration team fails, the main force will be exposed. Luke took a deep breath, steadying himself. It's a risk, but if we move fast enough, the enemy won't have time to react. Rex gave him the nod of approval. The team was on the ground. The first stage of battle was silent. The infiltration team, Luke, Rex, and a handful of New Republic commandos moved through the underbrush, avoiding patrols. The base loomed ahead, massive Durasteel walls towering over them. Luke held up a hand, signalling the team to stop. Through his macro binoculars, he spotted the anti-air turrets perched atop a tower. They were well guarded, but not invulnerable. He turned to Rex. "We need a way to get inside." Rex scanned the area, then pointed to a maintenance tunnel near the base of the tower. "There. It's risky, but it'll get us where we need to go." Luke nodded. "Then that's our way in." They moved quickly, slipping through the tunnel unnoticed. Once inside, they climbed a ladder leading directly to the control room. Two stormtroopers stood guard. Luke activated his lightsaber. Before the troopers could react, he struck, his blade flashing in the dim light. The guards crumpled. The team moved inside, placing explosive on the turret's control panel. Luke keyed his comm. "Turrets are going down. Get ready to move." Seconds later, a series of explosions ripped through the tower. Alarms blared across the base. Then, the full assault began. Outside, New Republic forces launched their attack. Blaster fire erupted as soldiers stormed the front gate, drawing Imperial attention away from the infiltration team. From above, Luke and Rex watched the battle unfold. "Not bad, kid. Not bad at all." Luke exhaled. The battle was far from over, but for the first time, he understood what it meant to truly be a commander. Days after their victory against the Imperial Remnant outpost, Luke and Rex were called to an emergency mission on the planet Jakros 5, a barren, war-torn world deep in the Mid-Rim. An Imperial warlord had entrenched himself in a fortified city, using it as his last stand for his dwindling forces. The New Republic needed the city liberated, but every assault had been repelled by heavy defenses, brutal urban warfare, and a well-coordinated stormtrooper resistance. Luke, now self-proven as a commander, was given the authority to lead the operation. Rex, standing beside him in the New Republic war room, studied the battle plans with a grim expression. "Urban warfare is the worst kind," he muttered. "Too many variables, too many places to get ambushed." Luke exhaled. "Then we'll have to outmaneuver them." Rex looked at him. "Are you sure about this, kid?" Luke nodded. "We have to win this battle, and I need you with me." Rex sighed, rubbing his temples. "Well, someone's got to make sure you don't get yourself killed." With that, the two prepared for their most difficult battle yet. The landing transport shook violently as blaster fire erupted from below. The sky over Jakros 5 was filled with the thunder of war. TIE fighters streaking overhead, New Republic X-Wings dogfighting in the clouds, and artillery shells slamming into the ruined buildings of the city. Luke, standing in the troop bay of his transport, gripped his lightsaber tightly. Across from him, Rex adjusted his blaster, wearing his old Phase 2 clone armor. "This one's gonna be tough," Rex muttered, looking at the men around him. "We need to hit them, hard and fast." The transport shuddered as it broke through the cloud cover. Below them, the ruined city stretched for miles, a wasteland of broken skyscrapers, abandoned speeders, and shattered streets. Then came the enemy fire. Turbolaser blasts streaked up from the city, hammering the New Republic gunships. One transport exploded in a fiery burst, sending debris raining down. Another was hit, spiraling out of control before slamming into a building. Luke grimaced. "It's already a massacre." The pilot's voice crackled over the comm. "Brace for impact! Dropping in 5! The ramp blew open and the troopers jumped into the inferno. Luke ignited his lightsaber mid-air, deflecting blaster bolts as he and Rex descended into the chaos. The battle was a nightmare. New Republic troops poured into the city, fighting block by block, as stormtroopers used the ruins as choke points. Blaster fire rained from the windows of bombed out buildings, snipers picking off soldiers in the streets. Luke fought on the front lines, cutting through stormtroopers, deflecting fire, and leading his men forward. Rex, blaster in hand, barked out orders. Push forward! Take that alleyway! Move! Move! TIE fighters screamed overhead, strafing the New Republic forces, forcing them to take cover behind wrecked vehicles. Explosions rocked the streets. The casualties were piling up. Luke could feel it in the Force. The despair, the pain, the overwhelming loss. The realization struck him. We're losing. The New Republic forces were pinned. Luke's entire platoon, more than 50 soldiers, were trapped in Central Plaza, surrounded on all sides. Heavy E-Web turrets cut down anyone who moved. Reinforcements weren't coming. Luke panted, crouched behind a pile of rubble. His robes burned, his face streaked with dirt and sweat. Across from him, Rex reloaded his blaster, gritting his teeth. We have to pull back. Luke clenched his fists. We can't. If we retreat, the Imperials will take the city. Rex looked around at the bodies, the dying, the broken remains of their platoon. His voice hardened. There's no one left to hold it, Luke. A burning sensation grew in Luke's chest. Failure. He could feel it seeping into his soul. Then an explosion rocked the plaza, an Imperial walker rounding the corner. The few remaining troopers fought desperately, but it was hopeless. One by one they fell, until it was only Luke and Rex left. As the battle reached its darkest moment, Luke and Rex were forced to run. Blaster fire chased them through the ruins. Luke ignited his saber, deflecting bolts as he sprinted. Rex moved beside him, covering his flank, taking down troopers as they ran. They slid into a ruined building, taking shelter in the shadows. Their platoon was gone. Luke fell against the wall, gasping for breath. His mind swam with guilt, pain, and exhaustion. In that moment, Rex turned to him and shouted, "Anakin, we need to move!" Silence. Luke's breath caught in his throat. His entire body tensed. He looked up at Rex, wide-eyed. Rex froze, his expression shattered. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The air between them was heavy, filled with something deeper than words. Rex's mouth opened, then closed. His hands trembled. He took a step back, his eyes haunted. I... His voice broke. Luke's face softened. Rex. Rex clenched his fists. He turned away, his breath shaking. You remind me of him, kid. Too much. The weight of the war, of the past, of Anakin Skywalker pressed down on them both. For a moment, Rex wasn't here. He wasn't on Jackros 5. He was back in the Clone Wars, fighting alongside his general. The emotions cracked through his voice. I fought alongside your father for years. I trusted him. I believed in him. And then, I watched him fall. Luke placed a hand on his shoulder. I'm not him. Rex inhaled deeply. Then, with quiet resolve, he nodded. No, you're not. They barely made it out of the city alive. Luke and Rex, the last survivors of their platoon, slipped through Imperial patrols, commandeered a stolen speeder, and blasted their way off-world. The New Republic, realizing the mission was lost, called for a full retreat. Jackros 5 remained in Imperial hands. They had lost. Back on the New Republic flagship, Luke sat in silence, staring at the stars. The loss weighed on him, but more than that, it was Rex's words that lingered. The way he had looked at Luke, the way he had said, Anakin. Rex sat beside him, arms crossed, deep in thought. Finally, Luke broke the silence. Rex, will you stay? Rex turned to him. Of course. After defeat, you need a teacher now, more than ever. Luke nodded. Rex exhaled. Then, with a small smirk, he patted Luke on the back. Alright, kid. Lesson 2. Drop the scenarios you would like to see in the comments, and I will pick one every week for Fan Friday. I hope you enjoyed this video. See you in the next one.